Hello, friends. We're going to talk about the load of crazy and show some reactions. That was the Trump press conference, if you can call it that. Let's get right into it.
Donald Trump held a press conference on Tuesday in Palm Beach, Florida that was demented, delusional, and dangerous. But it was particularly very demented and delusional. Look, folks, I don't play Donald Trump audio or video clips anymore, but I want to share with you what went down at this press conference so you can understand how demented, delusional, and dangerous he is. He's talking about windmills, killing whales. He's talking about not ruling out sending our military to conquer Greenland and go to war with Denmark. He's whining about his court cases. He's talking about how heaters make him itchy. He's talking about water dripping from faucets, and he's going like drip, drip, drip. It was very strange. Let me explain what went down. Donald Trump was asked by a reporter, can you assure the world that as you try to get control of Greenland and the Panama Canal, you are not going to use military force? You are not going to use military coercion. Donald Trump says, no, I can't assure you on either of those two that he will not use military or economic coercion. He will not rule that out, meaning that he's open to going to war with Greenland. As our editor-in-chief, Ron Filipkowski, says, this is where we are at, folks. The president-elect is not ruling out using military force to seize Greenland and the Panama Canal. Then Donald Trump goes on a rant saying that Canada should be a state. He says we really don't need a lot of stuff from Canada. He goes, we don't need their lumber. He goes, we don't need their aluminum. He goes, we don't need their oil. He says, we don't need their resources. They just rely on us for military protection. So they need to become the 51st state of the United States. Donald Trump.
I'm going to put in real quick. As Ben explained, what Trump said, my opinion, and anyone with ears, was totally unhinged and has no place for the president of the United States. So let's continue. Got a few more clips here for you.
We're talking about the president-elect's comments about January 6th. I know that there were a number of statements that are not accurate. Can you tell us what happened?
There aren't. So listen to what he said about one prominent rioter and the presence of guns at the Capitol that day.
Ashley Babbitt was killed. She was shot. She had never been shot. She was shot for no reason whatsoever. In fact, they say that she was trying to hold back the crowd, and the crowd was made up of a lot of different people, so we'll see. But I will tell you this, the person that was killed was Ashley Babbitt. This would be the only insurrection in history where people went in as insurrectionists with not one gun, okay? And let me tell you, the people that you're talking about have a lot of guns in their home.
This not one gun thing, Dana, has been debunked for 3.5 years now, if not more. It is an out-and-out lie. Now, we'll never get a complete inventory of the number of guns brought by people to the Capitol that day because most of them were permitted to leave before later being arrested. But there have been numerous cases in which people carried guns on Capitol grounds and were convicted for it. I have a list in front of me. Mark Mazza, 2 loaded handguns on Capitol grounds, 5 years in prison. Guy Reffitt, more than 7 years in prison, carried a handgun on Capitol grounds. Christopher Alberts had a pistol during the riot, 7 years in prison. Jared Barger pleaded guilty, had a pistol there. John Ben Meiselas charged for allegedly twice firing a pistol in the air on Capitol grounds. A Roger Preacher, pistol in his waistband. Mario Maris of Texas, convicted of having a pistol in his waistband at the Capitol. So the not one gun thing is out and out false. Now, on the Ashley Babbitt case, look, it's subjective whether she should have been shot. I can't fact check that, but the president-elect is certainly leaving out some pertinent facts here, specifically that Ms. Babbitt was a rioter who was trying to enter a shattered window of the House Speaker's lobby, had been warned not to do so, was carrying a knife. So certainly not just wandering around aimlessly or something of that sort.
All right, Daniel, thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. And staying on the sort of broader topic or the related topic to January 6th, I don't want to lose sight of what he said about Jack Smith, calling him deranged and worse, which is, I know, not new. He called him mean and nasty. But also what happened while this press conference was going on, which is that Judge Aileen Cannon, a judge who actually he said that he had never met, even though he obviously had a very important case before her, and he appointed her to the federal bench. She ruled that this report that Jack Smith put together will remain sealed.
And she's not the final say, I should note. We'll wait to see,
Yeah.
because obviously the Justice Department is going to respond to this, I would presume. Basically, this report, from our understanding, and we learned a lot from a filing that came out last night, Trump's attorneys and the attorneys of his allies / co-defendants in Florida reviewed this over the weekend. They got to go to the DOJ, go into a conference room, and actually look at this report. The understanding is, as they laid it out in this filing, is that it's two parts, on the election interference case and the classified documents case. They were arguing in part that the classified documents case shouldn't come out because of the Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira. They still have charges pending against them. But Trump's attorney signed on saying none of this should be able to come out because Jack Smith's not supposed to be special counsel, which is Judge Cannon's findings as well, which is why the classified documents case is no more. Trump found out during that she says right now, temporarily, this report cannot be released. The Jack Smith can't even transmit it to the Justice Department, is what she's arguing. We'll see if that holds. Obviously, there will be appeals. We're told it could come out really any day now, potentially by the end of this week. But they are fighting very hard, and he is very angry that even part of this could come out. What I've heard from people over the last few weeks is that, a lot of this has to do with the Mueller report coming out and how Trump felt about that, because it went into details about his aides and whatnot. So we'll see if it ultimately comes out. But I mean, he came out, and I think so much of what we heard was there was this underlying level of anger about this and the sentencing in New York.
But I agree with that. I believe it because he talked about the Injustice Department, quote unquote, many, many times. The whole beginning of this news conference was also about the series of executive orders that Joe Biden has issued relating to land, relating to oil and gas, and that kind of prompted a lot of what he said. He said it yesterday on Truth Social and again at this press conference about the fact that he doesn't think Biden is giving him a proper transition, which Susie Wiles, his incoming chief of staff, explicitly said the opposite. But I don't want to gloss over some of the interesting things that we heard. We heard things before about windmills and so forth, but
don't forget about water in your dish.
He went off about, and we've actually heard a little bit about that before, believe it or not, but he went off about his anger about gas stoves and gas heat in particular, and the fact that the Biden administration wants it to be more electric. And then he said, people know that if you have electric heat in your apartment, in your house, you get the itch.
I mean, he has, guys, he's talked about these kinds of things, these environmentally tangential pieces of your everyday home life. He gets obsessed with them.
Yes.
But as I listen to Caitlin talk about the anger that was on display here, I do think it is important to note how much that is in contrast to what we've seen since the election in November from him. This was a more familiar Trump to anyone who paid attention to the 4 years where he felt completely under siege all the time when he was in the White House. That's not how he's felt. He's given voice to this when he said, everyone used to attack me and now everyone's being a friend of mine. That's part of his sort of lighter feeling about this moment and becoming the 47th president again, different than he felt becoming the 45th president. And this was a return to your point about the trailer. I just wonder if America knew we were going to get sort of this kind of repeat performance.
I'm sure
it's just a fascinating glimpse of his mindset, the artificial line separating the United States and Canada. No, that's an internationally recognized border, as is the sovereignty of Greenland, as is the treaty where Jimmy Carter signed over the Panama Canal, as is when you pull out a map, I use maps every now and then, where it says the Gulf of Mexico. That's been there for a while. Donald Trump thinks if I want it to be, it shall be. It's just a fascinating glimpse at his mindset. And in 13 days, he becomes president of the United States again, and we'll watch how much. Again, she knows better than anybody at this table. A lot of what he says is for negotiating purposes and bluff purposes to get some percentage of what he really says is what he wants. But here it comes.
They say you should live in interesting times. These are those times.
I want to bring in Jeff Zeleny, who is live for us now on West Palm Beach, Florida, right near Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. I think as a reporter, listening to this, Jeff, it certainly stood out to me that Donald Trump would not rule out military force to take control of the Panama Canal and Greenland. But also when it comes to Canada, you know, he had sort of what we thought was seemingly joking before, trying to belittle Justin Trudeau, saying Canada is the 51st state. But he seemed pretty serious in wanting to annex it and make it part of the U.S.
He's definitely serious about that, Pamela. Certainly a long list of headlines mixed in with some familiar grievances and greatest hits as well. But you mentioned renaming the Gulf of Mexico. He proposed renaming it to the Gulf of America. On another specific issue on the pardoning of January 6th, the defendants, he did not rule out pardoning violent defenders. He had a long list of grievances against what the Biden administration is doing on executive orders. But it was Greenland, something that the president-elect has been talking about repeatedly, initially sounding like bluster. He made clear he's very serious about that for national security concerns.
We need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time. You have approximately 45,000 people there. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world.
So perhaps it's no surprise that Donald Trump, of course, the real estate magnate, would want to expand U.S. territory. Much more complicated than that, of course. It's a Danish territory, and it's not for the U.S. to have. That does not necessarily mean that he could not build an argument for that, as well as send a message to other world leaders that Donald Trump is on the verge of being back. Of course, his first term in office, Pamela, as you well remember, we covered his first presidency. He made a hallmark out of trying to keep other foreign leaders off balance, if you will. And on that vein, he talked...
Okay, friends, I don't need to say much, obviously. Anyone who watched or listened to that press conference knows that was totally bonkers. It has no place for someone as powerful as the President of the United States. Which keeps going back to my question of how could you been watching this guy for the last 20 years, especially the last 10, and think he was worthy of being the president. That was totally bonkers, as the CNN host and Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch network went over. They said enough. They said, you know, I don't need to say anymore. So, we're living in some very, very interesting times, but sad times. And that's really all I have for you today.